you're absolutely positive you did not say to Mercer during the fight, quote, "You ain't got no money for me," end quote, correct? Answer, yes. Question. You know you didn't say that? Answer, I know that. Question. You know that's a lie, isn't it? Answer, if that's what you want to say, I know I didn't say it. That's Ferguson's testimony with respect to this tape. Members of the jury, he's their witness. They urge you to believe him when they put him on. They don't put him on because they urge you to find that he's a perjurer. That's his testimony about this tape. Is that a coincidence in connection with all of the other things I've just gone through with you? Is this one coincidence after another with respect to what is happening in this case? Of course, the tape, Ferguson would have been pressured to change his testimony with respect to Mr. Mercer, not only with respect to the ability to suspend him, but indeed the ability to tell him that he himself would be prosecuted. Now, recall Agent Talor's testimony that even he is saying that the lips sometimes don't match the sounds. That's his testimony. Sometimes the lips are moving and there's no sound. You have a mouthpiece on, but you can see, as indeed you can see the video, you can see lips moving on occasion. But when you listen, as Talor was forced to say, sometimes there's no sound. Again, it goes, members of the jury, to the authenticity of this exhibit and whether it's been tampered with. Now, the prosecutor may say, well, why, if they were going to tamper with the tape, why wouldn't they put on it something more specific and expressed out of Mr. Mercer's mouth? It becomes a little too obvious after a time, especially when you have a referee, members of the jury, who's saying that nothing untoward happened. Indeed. Indeed. And I'm going to get in a few minutes to the testimony of the referee, which is of critical importance in this case. Now, we have all that testimony. Now, let's look to the investigation as it begins in March and follows through June when Mr. Mercer is indicted. We have the investigators coming here and finding that no money was passed, no allegation of money being passed, no allegation that Mercer went to Ferguson beforehand and raised this issue beforehand and said, listen, I can't win, I need to pay you, I have a big payday here. Nothing like that. The wrong man did not win. Ferguson won the fight. And then we have Mr. Kelly being interviewed by the authorities. And he was interviewed, you heard today, in March of '93. Let me first read to you what he said on the radio, which he affirmed here as being true. And this is, of course, critical. He was asked on the radio, what can you tell us about the alleged bribe? And these are exact words. Well, apparently I think the media picked up on this because I reprimanded the fighters several times for talking. But the irony in this is I was reprimanding Jesse Ferguson, and Jesse Ferguson was talking, jive talk, if you will, to Ray Mercer, and I reprimanded him. And then he went on to testify that he had no evidence at all that Ray Mercer attempted to bribe or did something improper in the ring. And he was right there. What he says is that it was Ferguson talking trash to Mercer during the fight, and he stopped Ferguson. He calls it irony. In other words, it's ironic, he's saying, that Mercer has been indicted or is in trouble because of this. That's how frightening this is. It's ironic to him. It's a nightmare to Mercer. Now, they heard all this. This was part of their investigation. They plunged forward anyway. You remember Kelly also said on the witness stand that he heard Ferguson saying, you ain't got nothing. You ain't got nothing. Jive talk, trash talk to Mercer. You didn't train for me, things like that. He heard things. And remember, this man has got no axe to grind here. The prosecutor is not going to say that this man is lying to you, protecting Mercer. That's the farthest, the most remotest thing in this case. So a witness who's telling you what occurred that night in the ring. Do you think he would have acted if he heard something? Of course he would have. It's his job to stop it. And when the district attorney plays a portion of this audio and video, if she does, in her summation, please look to where Kelly is, where Wayne Kelly is during some of these alleged statements. He's right there. At times, he's breaking clinches when these statements allegedly are made. Obviously, he would have heard things if they were said. And indeed, look at them. Don't look at the phony transcript, which was prepared here as a part of an effort to frame Ray Mercer. And also, when you look at it, if the whole thing is played, and I don't know what, if anything will be played, remember on the video portion, that little tap that Ferguson gave to Mercer at the end of that third round. Ferguson was forced to say, well, that's an expression, well, you know, friends, after the so-called bribe attempt in the third round. Totally inconsistent, members of the jury. There are no other witnesses in the case. Getting back to the investigation in this case. I'm talking to you now about why they went forward with this case. No witnesses. Ferguson goes on the radio on March 3rd, or excuse me, on CNN. He says Mercer's innocent. Yet they push forward anyway. Let's make a case. Let's make a case. Now, why would they do it? Because of the publicity inherent in it, members of the jury. It's a distraction. It's a distraction. The city's on fire. There's dope all over the place, and they're pushing forward with this case. What is the reason, in the light of all the proof that they have, that nothing untoward happened? They push forward anyway. Let me tell you, it does not please me to say these things. Not at all. But it's consistent. It's the only conclusion that can be drawn from all of these facts that are now before you. Let me talk to you about the details of what occurred here. Do you remember the transcript, the third round? This is when Ferguson claims that this bribe offer was made. The transcript has this reference to Mercer. What do you want? And I said to you in my opening remarks, it wasn't there. And you've heard yourself now a couple of times. It's not there. It's just not there. Made up out of whole cloth to suggest to you that Mercer is guilty when he is not. And again, you're invited to call for this again, to listen to it again. It's not only evidence that the transcript is inaccurate, it's evidence that there's been an effort here to convict Mercer unfairly. Why would it be in there if nobody on earth could hear it except Talor? Remember, this wasn't a sounds like. I asked him on the cross, was this one of your sounds likes? He said no. He's positive it's in there. It's not there, and you know about his credibility also from the testimony about the transcripts that I covered with you already. Furthermore, do you remember the testimony about how the sound reference to sounds like got removed from the transcript? Right up until the night before they were put in, the sounds like were in there. And what did he say by that? He said, well, I can't really hear it. It's in the background. There was a lot of noise, so it sounds like. As soon as he finds out that the transcripts may not get admitted, it comes out. Then he goes on a witness stand and he says, well, I listened to it last night, and now I'm just as convinced about those references and attributions as I am about everything else. What would you think if you were sitting over in Mr. Mercer's position right now about testimony like that? his testimony about enhanced tapes. Enhanced tapes, in other words, working with the tapes to do things with the sound, at 597 of the record. Did you send tapes out on May 19 to be enhanced with the FBI? Answer, not to my knowledge, sir. Not to my knowledge. Then he's shown documents at page 598. Does that refresh your recollection that you sent out tapes to be enhanced with the FBI in this case? Answer, yes, sir. At 602 of the record, question, does that refresh your recollection? Would you look at the top of the second page, read it to yourself, and tell me whether it refreshes your recollection the tapes were enhanced in this case? Answer, it appears yes. Why does he first say tapes were not enhanced? He's the investigator on the case. And then he's forced to admit that they were enhanced. Which ones? Which ones were enhanced? And then he prepares the transcript and he says, first Ferguson says, well, Mercer, I was saying to Mercer, you got a name. You got a name. And here we find it in the transcript, you got a name. The referee comes and tells you what he hears, and that's not what was said. What was said there was you got nothing, according to the referee. Not you got a name, you got nothing. Baiting Mercer, trash talking him, distracting him, getting him emotionally upset to assist Ferguson in winning the fight. Nothing wrong in Ferguson saying that, that's part of boxing. What's wrong is that Ferguson was lying about it on the witness stand and denying that he was doing it. Now, I want to talk to you about Mr. Ferguson's credibility in this case, which obviously is a critical issue here. And I submit to you that he has no credibility in this case with respect to his testimony about Mr. Mercer. First, he said nothing to his corner at all. Secondly, he went on CNN on March 3 when this thing broke. Quote, I came into the fight knowing that I could beat him. I trained for him well. I went out there and beat him. No bribe, no nothing, and I was personally going to call the New York State Athletic Commission myself and tell them that I ain't heard nothing about no money. Remember, the New York State Athletic Commission, this is national TV. The New York State Athletic, Gordon, he's the one over there. So Ferguson's got an explanation for that. Oh, yes, I didn't want to hurt anybody, etc. Well, they went and met with him on March 17, and this is when his managers were present, Mr. Cohn and Mr. Braunstein. Now, these, as you know, happened to be working at one time for Mr. Mercer. Another coincidence? And Ferguson said there was a breakup. Remember that one expression he used? A breakup, suggesting it was quick. Now, another coincidence that it's the managers who were advising him who might have an axe to grind against Ray Mercer. Now, they claim that Ferguson said all these things on a tape. They could have suspended him at that time. He didn't report anything. You can imagine, you have to put yourselves in that setting to understand the pressure that Ferguson is under at this time. Now remember, what happens right after Ferguson starts to incriminate Mr. Mercer back in March of 1993? What happens? The next thing that happens is he gets the Bow fight for $500,000 in May. That's the very next thing that happens. Here's a man who, according to the prosecution, should be suspended for failure to report a bribe. Here's a man, according to the prosecution, who was on tape talking about money, who should at the very least be suspended. The next thing that happens to him, he makes $500,000 fighting the heavyweight champion. He's 20-10 at the time. He gets Bow. Since the time that Ferguson began to incriminate Mercer, he made $500,000 with Bow, $150,000 in the Mercer rematch, $45,000 with Bruno, and something we don't know pertaining to Papelli, which is not in the record. $695,000 total. Since the time he began to incriminate Mr. Mercer. And here's what he says, and indeed, here's what he bought. Here's what he earned. Here it is. Quote, Mercer said, I don't have it tonight. I ain't got it. I'll give you $100,000 if you go down in the fight. That's an exact quote of what he says that Mercer said to him during the fight. Absurd on its face, but he says it exactly happened that way. A speech. He's the only one who heard it. Now I want to get the critical proof of the fact that he was lying on the witness stand in this case. It's what he said after Mercer's indictment. Now, before his indictment on CNN, it makes some sense where he says, well, I didn't want to get Ray Mercer in trouble. That's why when they first came to me, I lied. Then he says, well, in March, I met with the prosecutors, and now I was talking to them. I went into the grand jury and told the truth. Now I want to deal with this critical interview he had on videotape with Lori Fuzz on September 20, 1993. And here is what he said, members of the jury. At that time, Lori Fuzz, situations like trash talk in the ring. I mean, when you say, that goes on all the time. What were his intentions that night, do you think? Ferguson, I don't know, tell you the truth. I can't give you a direct comment on that. I just say he wasn't prepared for me, and I was prepared for him, and I beat him. What if he's telling the truth here? Do you understand what this means? Is this a reasonable doubt? What if he's telling the truth? That means Mercer is innocent. And he went on, the very next thing. But going back to the trash talk and how boxing has a reputation for something like that, I mean, they say that those things do happen in a fight. And he says in response to that, oh yeah, in some cases, but this one just happened to be when someone picked up and decided to tell someone, and now it's been blown all out of proportion. Did he say that on the witness stand? What if he's telling the truth? What if he's telling the truth and you convict Mercer? Now I want to go back to show you what he said about this as it developed in the record. He didn't immediately admit this at all. Mr. Ferguson is not a stupid or dumb man at all, members of the jury. That's not going on here. He's not at all. He played dumb here, and I'll show you how he did it. He first let me make it clear that he was admitting what I just read at page 928 of the record. Question. So what we have here, Mr. Ferguson, is that when this thing first broke in March, Mercer was innocent, correct? You went on CNN and said he was innocent, correct? Answer, yes. Then you went and talked to the prosecution and said he was guilty, right? Answer, yes. Then you went to talk to Lori Fuzz and said he was innocent, correct? Answer, yes. This sequence here has been admitted by him after it was pulling teeth. Now let's go back to see how it started. At 889 of the record, he was explaining why he was making false statements. Question. I didn't want to say anything about it until I was approached by you and the police. That was in answer to questions by the prosecutor. He didn't want to get Mercer into trouble. Again, that makes sense for the March statement. It has nothing to do with the September statement once Mercer's under indictment. Here's how this thing first occurred, when he was first approached about this. And this shows you his credibility, how he's trying to slip away from this. At page 774. After the grand jury, after you went to the grand jury, did you then say again to other people, not the prosecutor, that Mercer was innocent? Answer, I don't remember saying any of that. He was denying it. He saw what was coming up. He's looking to convict Mercer here. He was denying that, even though he knew, as you'll see, that these statements were made to Lori Fuzz. He was lying to you attempting to frame Mercer. He was saying, well, I don't remember saying that, probably hoping that I didn't have the evidence. At 779, he denies specifically whether it was on, he had said it again, I don't remember. Now it's 779-7, after the recess during which he was shown the videotapes, here's what he says. Question, so when you talk to Lori Fuzz, it would be correct to say you misled her? And his answer is, because I had spoken to the grand jury. Now, what sense does that make? That's his answer in the record. He just made it up, because I had spoken. What is the answer as to why you would mislead Lori Fuzz? What is it? Perhaps the prosecutor for fashion went up. He's already put Mercer in the hot seat. He's already caused his indictment, right? The world knows it. Why is he saying these things to Lori Fuzz? There isn't even a legitimate, reasonable explanation consistent with Ray Mercer's guilt as to why he would do that. He was telling the truth to Lori Fuzz at the time. He wasn't with the prosecutor. He wasn't with the cops. He wasn't getting pressure from Gordon at that time. That's what occurred here. He was telling the truth, that Mercer was innocent, and this whole thing has been blown out of proportion. Was there trash talk? Of course there was trash talk in the ring that night. We don't doubt that. Ferguson admits it. The referee says it. In fact, Ferguson was doing most of it. Indeed, what's trash talk? It's an effort to distract the opponent, to knock him out if you can, if to win on points, whatever. You remember Ferguson also saying that he and Mercer were talking about the judges giving the fight one way to Mercer. You can imagine, use your imaginations here. It's in the record. I'm not asking you to speculate. The kind of discussion here. Ferguson is admitting it. You can imagine Mercer saying, you'll never get it. They'll never give it to you. You know, what are you trying so hard for? That kind of stuff. In the meantime, if he catches him, he knocks him out. You had proof here about what happened in Mercer's fight with Morrison. Do you remember Mercer was losing the fight with Morrison up to the 4th round or so, according to one of the witnesses, I forget who. Excuse me. And all of a sudden, Mercer caught Morrison with some punches and won the fight. That's what was going on here. Same thing. Ferguson was doing it to Mercer, Mercer was doing it to Ferguson. Indeed. You know, again, why didn't you see the Mercer-Morrison fight here? I mean, why are you speculating about what happened in that fight? Again, it's not my obligation to put evidence on. Why isn't that in here? Why aren't all Mercer's other fights? You know, was there talking in those fights too? I mean, you're asked to speculate. And I'm not asking you to speculate at all myself. I'm just saying it's not proven. It's not proven. I'm not saying what happened. I'm just saying there's no proof of it. Now, Ferguson on the rematch, which is important in terms of his motives. He started out, you may recall, by saying it was Mercer who wanted the rematch. That's how he started out. I didn't want the rematch. Then, again, you were excused. You looked at the video of the Papelli fight and what occurred afterwards, in which he said if he wanted a rematch with Mercer, and I'm quoting here exactly on television, if he wants one, meaning Mercer. That was in July or August of 1993. If he wants one. Ferguson's testimony that Mercer wanted the rematch was untrue. It was Ferguson who wanted the rematch, and he was pressing for it and hoping that Mercer wanted it. Now, Mercer, remember, is under indictment here. Desperate. obviously, money in Mercer's pocket is fine in terms of defending and going forward with his life. It's Ferguson. Now, what is he doing seeking a rematch? And you know what the proof is. He exploited Mercer's indictment in selling the rematch. Used Mercer's indictment as a way of the rematch with the promoters in the case. If he wants one, and again, you remember initially he denied it, and then he was shown again to be a liar. Now the prosecution will say, well, Ferguson proved that it was Mercer's promoter that did this. Remember, Ferguson got $150,000. It was Mercer's promoter. Listen, they had the power here, the prosecution, the cops, Gordon. They had the power to stop Ferguson. The power to stop him. The man got immunity in the grand jury in this case. According to their own position here, he failed to report a bribe. According to their tape, it's Ferguson who's talking money on the tape. No, they let him go through with it. They let him go through with it. The reason is it's a deal with the devil. It's a deal with the devil. It's Ferguson being rewarded. It's $150,000. Going to fight a man under indictment, making $150,000. He gets it. They let him do it. To keep him happy, so that he might not come on the witness stand and say to you what he said to Lori Fuzz. Now, is this unreasonable? I mean, did he say it to Lori Fuzz or not? And what if it's true? If it's true, this case is over in an instant. But not only that, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it's not true. You want to find that? You want to find beyond a reasonable doubt, you're convinced, and whatever the judge will say to you in terms of that high standard, that it's not true? I'm saying to you that we've proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt that it is true, meaning that you have an innocent man on trial before you in a nightmarish situation designed to put dollars in people's pockets and make other people famous. The prosecutor argues here last. Let her address it. And you remember Ferguson's testimony also about the subpoena issue. I asked him after the overnight recess, you know, do you want to change any of your testimony? He said, no, I don't want to change any of my testimony. And then it developed, as soon as the prosecutor got up, we started hearing this entire change of testimony about the subpoena issue. Oh, yes, I was thinking about it last night. Well, I asked him. He was here lying on the witness stand. Now, why is he doing this? He's looking to help them. That's what's going on. The testimony is being given to help them. Whatever he thinks they want, they get. That is what has occurred in this case with that man. The testimony he gave on the witness stand here, he said, I swear this happened in the third round. And I knew it from the time he said it to me because I was shocked that it happened. That's what his testimony was. And remember the little pat after the third round? I've spoken to you about it already. But what did he say in the grand jury? It was about the fourth round in the grand jury. Now, if you're in the boxing ring or in another endeavor, which is important to you, and something so shocking happens to you, that you hear something like that, I mean, you're going to remember it. And the testimony, I know when it happened. Makes some sense. I know exactly when it happened. I was shocked, that kind of thing. I won't forget this kind of thing. It's indelibly imprinted in my mind. And that's what he said here. The problem is he said in the grand jury, it was about the fourth round. That mixed up, you see, You know, unfortunately, I must say these things too because it's in the record. That mixes, the third round mixes very well with the what do you want in the third round. Makes a nice mix. You know, what do you want is in the third round. Now he remembers this happened in the third round. Now, is it fair to conclude here that Mr. Ferguson perjured himself on the witness stand at one time or another? Why hasn't he been indicted? You know, he's been saying these things to the prosecution. If you go in the deliberations room and you conclude, boy, you know, he perjured himself, it's quite obvious. He was even taking instructions from his manager here in the audience. If you make that conclusion, please go on to think about why he hasn't been charged by the prosecution. It's a crime to commit perjury.
Yeah, sustained. I don't think that's a fair comment. The jury will disregard it.
The December 6, 1993 trial date, from the record you see there was a prior trial in this case. It got adjourned because it was reported that Mr. Ferguson was traveling and was unavailable in December to try to come here and be a witness in this case. Yet he says he has no idea, he didn't make any requests, not to his managers, not to the prosecutor, etc. Now Mercer was ready to be tried here in December of '93. Ferguson's not ready. We get an adjournment. And what happens in the meantime? He gets the Bruno fight. He gets the Bruno fight in England, which he fought here on the very same day that the lawyers, including myself, opened. He gets the Bruno fight. Is it unreasonable to suggest to you that he did not want the trial in December because he was looking to make more money? And what if Mercer got acquitted in December? In connection with this entire bizarre case, use your common sense in assessing what would have been in the minds of the boxers at the time. I mean, the prosecution says Mercer was desperate. He came in, he was out of shape, and he offered Ferguson a bribe in the third round. First, Mercer wasn't losing the fight in the third round. It had just started. That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, he would have offered him, if he were that desperate, that he was looking to offer him money in the third round, right at the very beginning of the fight. If he had those kind of thoughts in his mind, why wouldn't he go to him beforehand? He knew Ferguson when there weren't cameras and tape machines and referees. It makes no sense at all. Why would he wait? And you remember Ferguson's testimony. Normally, in a situation like this, members of the jury, the favorite is going to be given the fight. 9 chances out of 10, I think Ferguson said, unless the underdog knocks out the favorite. Mercer would have had that in his head as well, in terms of whether something like this would have happened, and happened in the third round. Absolutely nonsense. Indeed, Ray Mercer, according to Ferguson, almost won this fight on points. 2 of the judges had it very close. Not that I'm suggesting to you that Mercer himself in the later rounds thought that he was beating Ferguson. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying to you that Mercer would have been thinking in his own mind in the later rounds that he was beating Ferguson. In fact, there's a good argument there that he got a pretty good whooping that time. And in the later rounds, he would have been thinking that he got a whooping, and he was looking to knock out Ferguson in the 10th round, especially Mercer came on real strong in the 10th round, real strong. The point I'm making is what his state of mind would have been. Would it have made sense for him, knowing all these things, to offer Ferguson money during the fight, knowing that generally he'd win the fight anyway? Remember, Ferguson's saying the money's offered in the third round. Makes no sense at all, and obviously, is he going to do it on tape? You saw all these cameramen and sound people. They were all over the place, and he's going to do it in front of the referee. How does Mercer know the referee won't hear it? I mean, did Mercer think about these things? Just more proof, members of the jury, that it makes no sense that this thing would have occurred. and that all of these things that I've been going through are not one coincidence after another, showing really that, you know, they're one coincidence after another, but Mercer's still guilty. They're all lined up, directing you in only one conclusion, I submit to you, that the man is not guilty of this charge. Now, the prosecution made the claim that Mercer would have gotten Bo for big money if he had beaten Ferguson. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to deny that at all. But also, the same witness who proved that he would have gotten, not that he had it, but that there was a chance that he would get it. No question at all about that. Not that there was a signed contract, but there was a chance. But the issue here is, as the witness testified, even if he lost to Ferguson, this is boxing. Everybody knows one loss does not ruin your career. You come back. 2 or 3 wins later, maybe 2, you got the same fight. Again, makes no sense. So all of these various things, any one of them, there are about 15 of them, I submit to you, suggests a reasonable doubt in this case. But the thing, members of the jury, even more important than even those things, and they are important, is Mercer's character. You've had proof here in the record with respect to his character. His whole life is inconsistent with this charge. What does he do? He's in the military, serving with distinction for, I think the proof was 6 years. I don't want to misstate. 6 years at least. I'm not sure, it may have been more, but 6 years is at least. His whole life, he's working towards a goal in the military. Hard, honest work. He wants to be the Olympic champion. He becomes the Olympic champion in 1988. This is not the stuff from which members of the jury, bribers are made. I mean, the Olympic champion, can you imagine the work, the effort, the hard work and honest endeavor involved in that effort to become the Olympic champion in a heavyweight division in the world? Take your experience there. What kind of a man are you dealing with here? Then he achieves that. He becomes a professional. And what happens after that? After he becomes a professional? You heard these witnesses say he's got an excellent reputation in his life for being a truthful and honest person, helping the needy. You heard the testimony about Project Pride. He did not leave people behind. This is not a greedy person. It's not a person who violates the law. It's not a person who should have been charged on this flimsy evidence in this case. The man's got an excellent reputation for being a truthful and honest and law-abiding person. Well, members of the jury, if you had served, as some of you have, in the military for 6 or 9 years, your country with distinction, if you had worked hard, as some of you had, to achieve your own goal,